You should be asking how's the Josh today.
How's the Josh?
How's the Josh? Hi, okay, very good. And how excited are we for today?
Very excited.
Very? Are you sure? I think the energy is lesser than yesterday.
Yes.
You're tired and late too.
Yes.
You said yes? Did you hear my question? See, this is so sad. This is so sad. Acha, may I request everyone to please put their phones on silent. We had quite a few ringing at inappropriate times yesterday. And on this note, welcome to day 2 of Muskaan Literature Festival for Child Authors. I welcome everyone to this gathering today. I welcome the students, I welcome the parents. We all know what this festival is about, so I will cut straight to the first session today, which is titled What If? And I'm really excited to see what this session is all about. I would like to invite, first of all, our panelists on the stage, Debangana Sengupta, Dharman, Sheth, and Huzaifa Bohori. In the morning, yes, we can bring some energy to the house. And moderating this session is Savie Karnel. I would love to have you on stage, Savie. She's an author whose book has been shortlisted for very many prizes, and she writes for children, and she has also been writing since she was 11 years old. So she is you, but sometimes back in time. Savie, the session is yours. Over to you.
Hello, good morning to you all.
Good morning.
And how are you all today? Oh, lovely to have happy faces. And this morning, we have with us 3 authors. And do you know what this session is about?
What if?
What if? And what do you think is what if?
What show?
What? Sorry? Well, stories of fantasy, magic, adventure are perhaps one of the first stories we ever hear. Your first story could be The Lion and the Mouse. And your first book could be The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. But our first stories captivate us. And they all have elements of fantasy and adventure. And some may argue that magic doesn't exist. For them, I would like to quote G.K. Chesterton. I quote, "Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten." These stories give us hope and strengthen our belief of the triumph of good over evil. So this morning we have with us 3 amazing young authors who have imagined new worlds, created new universes, and taken their readers on journeys beyond the horizon. Well, our first panelist is 11-year-old Huzaifa Bohori, the author of The World of Reflections. Huzaifa's he loves writing and can often be seen typing stories in his free time. Welcome, Huzaifa. And tell us a little more about yourself. What else do you like besides writing?
Thank you for the introduction, ma'am. I usually like sketching a lot, and that is one of my stress busters. And I also like coding.
That's lovely. And our next author is 13-year-old Debangana Sengupta, and she's the author of Book of Magic, Stories to Imagine. Well, Debangana loves to sketch, sing, dance, and she likes digital art as well. Well, Debangana, tell us a little about you and your dream.
So basically, as you know, ma'am already gave a brief introduction. I'm a 13-year-old happy teenager who loves to write about fiction. You know, fiction helps us to escape from this tumultuous world we have. And to add on more extra about me, I'm a Odissi dancer, classical Odissi dancer for 10 years. And I'm also a trained music artist. I also love to write short stories in my leisure time. I compose songs when I'm not doing anything.
Thank you, Debangana. And the next author is 13-year-old 13-year-old Dharman Sheth, and he's from Gujarat. And he says he's accomplished all that he has read in his book, The Rising Flames. Well, he started writing blogs and short stories, and has also been part of adventures and treks. Well, Dharman, tell us a little bit about yourself and also about your superhero, Hamlet Carlos, is it?
Thank you for the introduction, ma'am. My character Hamlet Carlos is basically introduced as a child in this book, and then when he got the superpowers, it is briefly introduced in the book. So I might not reveal the plot much, but it is inspired from many events that happen. And as you introduced, I am interested in trekking. So from the age of 2.5 years, I am going to trekking, and I have done national treks and international treks, and I'm very much into the adventure part actually. Apart from writing, this part actually gives me freedom. And about writing blogs, actually I started it 2 years ago, and I started writing short stories, and then I combined it and formed it into a novel.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Huzaifa, I want to know about your character. You have a very nice character in your book called Mishto, is it?
So Mr. is just this average boy who is extremely confused and always in his own world, and this leads him to another realm. I wouldn't like to say why, let's not reveal the plot, but when he goes to the other realm, he gets to know that the fate of the whole earth is in his hands, and that if he doesn't take an action quick, he's going to create a big problem for all life.
Thank you. Debangana, but you have a collection of short stories. Okay, and there's one story in your book that really intrigued me. That's about Cinderella. So tell us a little bit about Cinderella in your book.
So Cinderella, we all know she received a very wretched behavior from her stepmom and stepsisters. But in this case, we see a change in her character. She's more of a dynamic lady. She's the most dangerous lady I've ever met. She works for the secret corp community, where she restores peace for a particular area without revealing her name or work. And we all know that Cinderella was destined to marry the prince, but here she's destined to marry she's destined to kill the prince. So there's this twist we see, and it's kind of shocking because it does not really have a happy ending here.
Well, I would say it's a happy ending if she wants to be independent. Unlike in our fairy tales, this Cinderella is independent and she doesn't want to be a princess, but she wants to carve it out on her own. And I think we need more stories like this, and less of damsel in distress stories, isn't it? What do you guys feel about having heroines instead of heroes? So what would you feel about it, Dharman? I think even you have a character in your book. Gauri. Can you tell us about Gauri and who helps a superhero, right?
So Gauri is basically the superhero's best friend, and she was actually a schoolmate of his, and she's helping Hamlet Carlos, and despite of his flaws in the starting, she was always with him, and now as he has got the powers and he's struck with responsibilities, then also she's with him. So that plays an important role of friendship, and I want to make sure that there is every part of human aspect in this book, so I added this friendship aspect also as a character named Gauri.
Wonderful. And coming to Gauri, you have an Indian character, I would say an Indian name. But again, with most of both of your characters, okay, you have mostly Western names for your superheroes. Why is that so? Why can't we have a Debangana or a Huzaifa or a Dharman as a superhero?
Ma'am, basically, first I thought I would be giving the character my name, but then again, it's a story I'm creating where it has the same qualities of mine. The characters are kind of similar, but I wanted to give a foreign name because it's not located in India.
Okay, yeah. And what about you?
Actually, we have seen that many countries are adapting now the Indian culture. So I wanted to give the foreign characters actually the Indian culture, and I wanted to make them experience that what is it like being the Indian culture. And also we have experienced the Indian culture very well, and we don't know that what is it in the foreign culture. So to experience new things, I tried to make it a bit Western character.
Oh, that's wonderful, but I hope to see more Indian superheroes. And coming to you, Huzaifa, your character has a very unique name. Yeah, tell us about it.
So when I was naming my character, I wanted it to be something different, something that was unique, and something that could be the identity for my book, and something that is nowhere else in the world. So that is why I named it something that has never been used. And thus I named my character Mr.
Whoa, nice. Lovely name. And yeah, and most I thought there's a common thread in all of your stories. I guess there's a quest. Yeah, your heroes and your heroines are on a quest. Well, why do you think quest is so important for a fantasy story? Yeah, what to tell us about Mishto's quest? Why do you think the quest is important?
So I think that when I started with the book, I depicted Mr. as a very as a boy who's always out of his world and possessed many flaws. So, but I realized that doing a quest by such a boy would be a very difficult task. And so to show that change that can come to you when you have the sense of responsibility, I gave him a quest so that we could witness a change in a person that could occur because of great responsibility that comes with it.
Yes, with great power comes great responsibility. So we have heard, haven't we all? Well, Debangana, in your story, there's another story in your book of a character called Emilia. Yeah, and why is that, you think the quest was so important for the plot?
So, ma'am, we all have quests in our life. It's like a transformation everyone goes through. Maybe it's a transition from childhood to adulthood. It's a quest we have all been through. So I want my characters to be more pragmatic. Everyone can relate. So the quest is really important.
That's wonderful. And tell us a bit about the journey in your book.
So actually, Hamlet Carlos is not an immature character. He already has some quest already, but this quest is special because he has lost his responsibility, and from much time it is like he has been lost into the thoughts of the past, and so he wants to find himself. Rather than finding anything, the quest is important to find yourself, and even if you don't get the thing you are going for, like it's not a treasure. The treasure is within you.
Well, so this is a quest within. That's quite philosophical, isn't it? Yes. Well, and I guess in these stories, we have seen new languages being created. That's what we've seen in many fantastical stories. And so, Dharman, in your story also, you have this language called Drakian. Yeah, how difficult was it to create a new language?
Actually, I am very interested in learning new languages, and recently I have been into learning many languages. Like European languages are most common learned languages, but I'm also into learning Mandarin because it is the most difficult language in the world, as said. This language was difficult to create because you need to prepare a dictionary for it first before creating any language, and so I had to create a dictionary first of the words that what do these words mean. So you have to refer to English also, and then you have to make a new language also.
That's quite a tedious task, I believe. Wonderful. But to create a dictionary and to create these words, did you take inspiration from other languages? How did you make the words? How did you form the words?
Yeah, these words were actually derived from many other languages, like the languages which I liked and languages which have existed, which actually mean deep inside us. Like there are many words in Latin and many words in Greek that have been formed in Dreki, that have their origin in Greek and Latin. So I got inspired from many languages.
So can you give an example of a one word and how do you derive it?
Yeah, there is one word known as carbon descal, which is the main thing in that. So it was not derived from any language. There's a fun fact actually. The carbon descal is actually a powder used to clean washing machines.
Oh,
So my mother was one day using it and I got inspiration from that.
Great, so I need to read the back of my washing machine and the detergents. I think that's what I'm going to do after going back. And well, Huzaifa, what inspired you to write this story about Mishto? And tell us a little about the world of reflections.
So the world of reflections is basically a whole new realm, and the point is commuting between the world of reflections and our world is forbidden, and nobody really knows that in our world that a world of reflection exists. But in the world of reflections, people do know that we exist. Now the difference is that the people in the world of reflections are basically people who look like the reflections of their own self that would occur in our world. So if we look into upon the reflection, we find the same thing. We see reflections in the world of reflections. So now when Mr. enters it by an accident, enters the world of reflection by an accident, he faces many difficulties in escaping the people who want to punish him for committing the sin. And so that's how this plot is based, and how do you want to reveal for it.
So it's like a parallel universe. But it's an interesting way they travel to this parallel universe, and I thought that you have to read Huzaifa's book. Debangana, what inspires you to write?
So from a very young age, I will be telling you the truth. My mom didn't really want my relatives to give me Barbie dolls as the birthday gift. She wanted everyone to give me books so that I was surrounded by books. When I go to sleep, books are here and there, and I'm just surrounded. It's like the world of books when you enter my room. So growing up, I read books written by Ruskin Bond, Enid Blyton, and those became an inspiration for me. And also, I come from the land of the great Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore. So his short stories, his poem in Gitanjali, they were a great inspiration for me. And the term inspiration is a very far-fetched term. It carries a lot of responsibility. So the person who is actually going to inspire you becomes an idol in our life. So yeah, they really inspired me. I wanted my name to be on a book, to feel proud that I've accomplished something in my life.
That's wonderful, Debangana. I hope your name is on many more books. But Debangana, I just noticed, but your book has a different name. It doesn't say by Debangana, but it says by Dhriti. Why so?
So there's a catch. I didn't want to reveal my name. Dhriti is a pseudonym that is actually my nickname, lovingly given to me by my parents. So it has some emotional attachments, although sharing feelings with this book, the nickname has.
That's great. Well, Dharman, I think to form complete characters need backstories. We need to have stories of their background or where they come from. And you've wonderfully done it in your book. And you created not just backstories, but stories for your universe as well. There's something called Deska stories in your book.
Yeah, that's mainly inspired from the books I read. I'm very much into the sci-fi books, like Stephen Hawking books, typically what they call. And about backstories, so I think that each person has a backstory, and without knowing it, you cannot judge any character. So from time to time in my book, I have put backstories of all the characters that are there in the book, and with knowing that what they have experienced, they can go into their further crisis, and they can they can tell what to do next. They can react accordingly.
That's wonderful. That's nice. And Debangana, you have many stories in your book. Tell us about, you came up with so many different stories and different kind of stories, different kind of characters. You have a cat and rat tea party also somewhere, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these characters are basically developed from my friends itself. They became the people who I can convert into characters. Their personalities are really bubbly and innocent. So I created characters from those my friends. And speaking of the stories I've written, these are basically all the stories that evolve around every household, but with some twist, with some fantasy, fiction mixed with it. So yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I need to be careful. I think I may be a character in your book in future. Well, Huzaifa, that's really, what's very interesting in your story is, you have Mishto and then you have a non-human character. So why did you think of a non-human character with Mishto?
I honestly don't understand who you mean by the non-humans. Okay, yeah, so my plot was that to enter the world of reflections, you need to drop slime into water, and that's how. So that's how you end up entering the world of reflections. While Mr. was unaware of that fact, he ended up doing it, and I think getting a non-living creature in such a and giving it such great value in my story, I think gave it a different twist than non-fantasy.
Because when you imagine, I think the thing with fantasy stories is when you read, you visualize, you imagine the scenes. And imagining a non-living character kind of gives a different thrill to the story. Well, but again, I've seen another thing in your stories, there are riddles. To get out of a situation, your characters need to solve riddles. So tell us how important are riddles and how did you come up with these riddles? How about Huzaifa? Your book also has a riddle. How did you come up with the riddle? You don't have to tell what the riddle is, but how did you come out?
So when I was writing the book, I was basically surrounded with many ideas, with the profession of writing and the joys of it. So I came up with a riddle that is very close to the work of an author, and basically that's how I formed the riddle. And I think riddles play a very important role in any quest, because if your quest is too easy, it's not going to be fun. It has to be really hard to get ahead, and there have to be times where you can convince the reader that this is the end of it and the protagonist is fading. So I think that is why I used riddles.
That's interesting. And what about Debangana?
Ma'am, if you allow me, I can make this a bit more engaging. I can ask the riddles from my book to the audience.
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Amelia had to answer these riddles to get on with her quest. If you know the answer, you can raise your hand and it's going to be more interactive. What can run but can't walk?
Water.
Refrigerator.
Invigilator.
It's a water.
It's what?
Next, what has a face but can't smile?
A clock.
What has two banks but no money?
River.
Yeah. So these are some riddles, some of the riddles that she has to go through, and it helps her to continue her journey to the Greek world.
That's interesting. So since you've already started it, why not play a little game? Okay, I'll just say what if and some random thing, then you will have to finish the sentence with something that comes to your mind immediately. So let's start with Dharman. What if the flowers on the stage?
Burnt up and formed ashes.
Oh, wonderful. Well, what if this bottle of water?
Turns into gold so that you can sell it off.
Oh, that's so interesting. I'm going to steal it then. Oh, I hope we don't have a stampede here. So, Huzaifa, what if the chairs?
Just vanish. And we all fall.
I'm just imagining an empty room. Okay, and what if the sun today?
Didn't rise and we all would sleep and would come here.
My God, you all have such dystopian ideas. Debangana, what if the camera?
Record some paranormal activities, maybe there's a ghost behind us.
My God, you're having such interesting imagination. Well, Huzaifa, what if the mic in your hand?
Turns into a carrot.
That's funny. Well, something that did scare me, something that made me laugh. Thank you. Well, and I think now we could open to the questions from the audience. So do you have any questions?
Debangana writes under a pseudonym, right? So, why do you write under a pseudonym? Does it like help you, give you more freedom to write something? Like often in earlier, female authors would write under pseudonyms because
By my parents, so it has this emotional attachment. It's not more of giving freedom, yeah, that in the earlier times, female writers had to use a pseudonym to not reveal their name and go on with their work. They had more freedom because publication house used to often reject their works because they were females. But now society has changed. This is more for the love I have for my parents. So yeah.
For you, Debangana, why did you choose short stories instead of a whole story book?
I'll be very honest with you. I'm not more of that patience kind of girl. I don't really have patience. I think most of us here are not more of that. We'll be sitting in one place and we continuously writing a whole novel. I'm not like that. But yeah, short stories also take time, but it's more compact, more crisp. It also delivers the message you want to deliver in a short form basis.
Huzaifa, how does the riddles help you in the quest of your story?
Riddles make your quest very challenging, and sometimes if you can make a riddle challenging enough, you can make the reader completely believe that the protagonist isn't going to be able to solve it and it's the end of this, and probably their mind starts flying away to different places. Okay, so the protagonist fails, the consequence happens here, probably something new just starts out of nowhere to fix what the protagonist wasn't able to complete. And so the reader has, isn't able to easily guess your plot, and it makes the reader want to finish your story and, more interesting.
If I am the Debangana, who's asking the riddles in your story?
So, the riddles in my story is being asked by a mythological creature, Naomi. She's the guardian of the enchanted woods. So, being a guardian, she has to protect the place. She has come up with some riddles so that Amelia has to prove her worth, that she's worthy enough to cross this world, cross the enchanted woods. So, Naomi is one of those.
Ask riddles. And at the same time, trying to make it horrific, I wanted to add a tinge of humor to it. So I had this monster who basically wanted to eat Mr. at the end of the day. And he was also offering hints to him, say, don't take it seriously, but one leg for one hint. and two limbs were two, hints and something like that. So it's basically improbable creatures asking riddles, and at the same time with a tinge of humor.
So you said that you go on national and international treks. So have these treks ever inspired you to continue your writing in like the quests? So does do the treks inspire you?
Yeah, treks of writing and seeing around me. Actually, my inspiration is my whole world around me. Like if you tell me to write on this flower, I can write for how much ever words you say. So actually trekking, it gives me an open world, it gives me new exposure actually to the new world and what is around us that we don't know in our daily life.
Okay, thanks.
Question is to Huzaifa and Debangana. So where did you find these riddles from? From like Google, or did you make them up?
I had to really ponder about what the riddles would be because it's very difficult to come up with one. So, like in the process, I got one. Like thinking gives you the freedom to think more, and eventually you get the point where you want what the results are.
I was continuously pondering upon what to give. It had to be difficult, but at the same time, I had to come up with it. So I was, as I said before, I was covered into the world and the profession of writing. So that's how I came up with one that was related to being an author.
For Dharman, I'm a huge sci-fi and cyberpunk novel fan. So like Philip K. Dick, he's one of the people I really look up to. I couldn't imagine writing at your age or even now, but it's on my bucket list before everything finishes to kind of at least make it to one cyberpunk novel. So my question is, before you actually write down something like this, you are world building and universe building. How, approximately average, how long does it take you to do this? Like, what kind of range of time are we talking when you world build and create a universe?
A very difficult question because in the older times, in my grandmother's side, they used to tell that without reading 1,000 books, you can't even write a page. So you need to get that much inspiration. But nowadays the times have changed. We get inspiration from around us so much that we can write in a less duration, but still it takes so much duration to write a book. I started by writing blogs that eventually took me 1 year to complete this book. And then to make this a book, to edit this completely, it took another 1 year. So I completed it in 2 years.
Wow. Thank you. Savie, any last words to conclude this session?
Well, I would say I'm inspired. Thank you very much.
And thank you to her at one time. So she's perfect for being here on the stage today. We have some time before we begin the next session, so we can use this time to listen to Debangana.
Song Like My Father by Jax. I wanna come home to the roses and dirty little notes on post-its. And when my hair starts turning grey, you'll say I'm like a fine wine, better with age. I guess I learned it from my parents, that true love starts with friendship. A kiss on the forehead, a take night, fake an apology after a fight. I need a man who's patient and kind, gets out of the car and holds the door. I want a slow dance in a living room light. We're 18 now, senior prom and grow. Oh, with someone who makes me feel young. I need a man who loves me like my father loves my mom.
Wow. Okay, and we have a 5-minute break before we begin the next session. If possible, stay seated. If possible.